All right, hello, welcome to another lecture. We are going to be learning a new skill here, and once we learn this, we're going to be applying it to making another app. But let's just focus on what this lecture is about, and that is timers. How you can make your code delayed to only run at a certain point, or repeat to run over and over again at certain time intervals. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start a new project. I'm just going to call this timer demo. And we'll go ahead and make this project. So I'm going to show you two different ways that you can make timers. You can kind of decide which one you think is best, and you'll see how we use them moving forward, but just wanted to introduce you to a couple ways to do this. I'd also like to take this time to, if you ever want to change the layout of Android Studio, you've probably seen I've bumped up the font size here on this. You can go up to Android Studio, Preferences. This is if you're on a Mac, but even on Windows and Linux, I believe you can still get to your preferences. As long as you get to the preference pane, you want to go down to Editor, into where the fonts and colors are, go down to the font, and you can increase the size and a bunch of other things too, but I just wanted to show you how to do that in case you were interested. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the first way to work with a timer, and that's by using something called a handler and a runnable. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to make a handler, and the handler basically allows us to do some timing functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a handler, okay, and we're going to give this some sort of name. Let's just be kind of bland here. We'll just call our handler. We'll say this should be a new handler. Excellent. Then with this handler, we have to create a runnable that says, here's some code that I want to run. So the handler runs the runnable. Okay, I know that's kind of a little bit chunky there, but we'll work through it. So we're going to create a runnable. So we'll do runnable. Okay, so we have a new runnable, which we'll just call run. We're going to set this equal to a new runnable. Excellent. And you can see it's created this function for us called run, which basically this is the code that is going to get run here. Let me put an ending semicolon there. So yeah, our handler is going to run the code that's inside of this runnable, and we can decide what that's going to be. So let's go ahead and write our code for now, which is let's just log out something. So we're going to say log.i and just say, hey, it's us. And we're also going to maybe say like a second has passed by. We're going to make a timer that runs every second. So a second has passed by. Excellent. Okay, now with this, what we're going to do is we're going to say after we've logged this information, we then want to schedule the handler to say, hey, go ahead and run this runnable again after X amount of time. So in order to do that, we reference the handler, and then we say .post delayed. You can see that down there. And you have to pass it a runnable, which in this case, if we just say this, it's going to refer to the runnable that we're in now. So we'll say this. And then we have to give it a certain amount of time. Now, it will refer to time in milliseconds. So 1,000 essentially equals 1 second. So when we say, hey, it's us, a second has passed by, and then it says, okay, run the same thing in 1,000 milliseconds. This means it's going to run every second, okay? So this looks all fine and dandy, but if we were to go ahead and run this right now on our emulator, nothing would happen because we've created this handler, we've created this runnable that sort of, re-registers the handler every time it does its thing. It says, hey, I'm going to schedule myself to run again. I'm going to schedule myself to run again, right? Like, that works. But at some point, we've got to kick off the process, and we haven't done that yet. So what we would need to do in order for that to happen is similarly to like what we had here, we would say handler dot, and instead of post delayed, we would just say post, but we do have to pass it the runnable, which in this case we called run. So go ahead and say run, and that's all we've got to do, okay? So now that this code actually has a position to start, let's go ahead and run this. Looks like our emulator's still coming online here, but let's go ahead and make sure that we're running this new version. Yeah, we want to restart the app. Well, I guess let's give the emulator here a second to get itself up and running. All right, so the emulator finally got ready to rock and roll here. Let's go ahead and open up Logcat, see what we got. And look at that. We've got a second pass by. It's showing up, and we've got every second here. So that is good news. That means we're ready to rock and roll. All right, so this is one way that we can do a timer. So let's go ahead and just comment this out because I have another way that I want to show you. Okay, go ahead and just do the multi-line comment there. And the next way that we're going to learn how to do a timer is use something called a countdown timer. So I prefer this method more than doing the handler and the runnable. The handler and the runnable, those can be more useful in some situations that aren't just for timers. So I think that was a good skill to learn. But this would be my more preferred way about doing timers. Of course, up to you how you want to handle that. But just go ahead and we're going to create a new countdown timer. We're not going to pass it into a variable or anything, create a new variable. We're just going to create this and have it run its course one time. So we're going to say new countdown timer. Make sure you got the one from Android OS. And in this new countdown timer, there's a couple of things we got to pass in. So you can see how many milliseconds you want this thing to ultimately run for. So if we want it to run for 10 seconds, we would pass 10,000 milliseconds. And then it's going to ask you for the countdown interval, meaning like how often do you want to check back in with you. So if you want to every 1 second do something, you would pass in 1,000 milliseconds. Now, if you want to, every 10th of a second be able to run some code, well, in that case, you would want to do just like 100 there. But, I think we should just have this run every second for 10 seconds. So let's go ahead and do that. And we actually don't want a semicolon here. We want our opening curly bracket and ending curly bracket. At the end of that is where we'll put our semicolon. Now with this countdown timer, we have to implement two functions. So the first one, let's go ahead and just say public void. This one is going to be called on tick. Okay, so this one is going to get called every time that this countdown interval has been reached. Again, you can choose what this is going to be. Right now, since it's 1,000 milliseconds, it's going to be every second we're going to have on tick called. But inside of here, what's going to be passed is a long, which is basically a really big int. And we're just going to go ahead and call this milliseconds until done. Okay, so this is kind of telling us how much further we have on what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and log this information. So we'll do our capital log .i. All right. And we'll say seconds left. And let's go ahead and say how many seconds are left. And if you think about it, if we've got milliseconds and we want to show them as seconds, we should divide that by 1,000. All right, now if we're going to do this, we've got to turn this into a string. So we're going to say string dot value of, and we'll go ahead and pass that information in there. Do our ending parentheses and a semicolon. Let's give ourselves some space to look at this code here. Okay, so that's one function that we've got there. The next one that we want to do is on finish. So let's do public void on. Got to do capital on finish here. Okay, and this is going to be run whenever the countdown timer is completely finished. So we're going to go ahead and do a log here. Always forget to do the capital on that. And we'll say something like, we're done! Exclamation point. No more countdown. Okay, so you can see this sort of timer is more geared towards counting down to a particular point in time, whereas this just sort of ran on into the future. You would probably want to, with this sort of timer, have some sort of if statement saying, hey, after this thing has happened or whatever, I want to end this thing, doing something every 1 second until the end of time. So anyways, something to note there. And yeah, let's just go ahead and test this, right? So I'm going to hit run here. Let's get Logcat open. Oh, we forgot our semicolon. Make sure we've got that. But I guess by having that error, it opened up Logcat for us, so that was kind of nice. Here comes our app. I don't know why we're looking at the screen. It doesn't do anything. Oh, and we don't have anything here because I forgot the very last important step of a countdown timer. You have to start it. So here at the end of our curly bracket, we're going to do dot start. So do you see when we made this new countdown timer on this, we did .start. Now, if we had put this in a variable, we would maybe call the variable name .start, but here we're just going to do that. So let's run that one more time, and now we should see something actually showing up here in Logcat. So there it goes, and look at this. 8 seconds left. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. No more countdown, and that's it. So the timer ran its course, did its thing. Totally awesome. And I just want to show you, just kind of for fun here, if we drop this down to 100 milliseconds, meaning this is going to run every 10th of a second. And so let's go ahead and run this. This will be kind of interesting to see. Okay. So here comes the app, and look at this. So it's calling it much, much more frequently. You'll notice that it can't keep up with how many times it's supposed to be called. So, even though we were supposed to have it run every, 10th of a second here, it kind of topped out at some situations, right? Like we've seen 9 only showed up, 4 times there. 8 only showed up twice. But anyways, so not always perfect here with these timers, but definitely 2 different ways that you can handle these. We are then going to use this moving forward in our next app. So remember, I said, I want to teach you new skills, and then we're going to take those skills and apply it to other stuff you've learned. Just make sure it's really cemented. So let's go ahead and move forward to the egg timer.